Keeping reptiles can be expensive. Well, I guess that depends on whether you're a generous person or a tight-fisted git, or how much money you just have access to. I thought it would be an interesting idea to try and actually put a price tag on some various reptile species, to actually get them, own them, and maintain them. So today we're going to do the corn snake, because they are the best pet snake, and probably one of the best reptiles you can have as a pet. So let's jump on into this with the cost of the snake itself first. Now, I had a commenter recently say it would be a good idea and a nice idea for me to have a snake in my videos. You know, be handling a reptile while I'm talking to the camera. And I agree, that would be a good idea. Hindsight though, I typically film on the same day that I feed the snakes. And they've already been fed. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start feeding on a different day to me filming, or after I've filmed, so I can actually have a snake or have something, you know, to hold while I'm filming. I mean, I could obviously go and hold a lizard while I'm filming, but it seems a little odd to be holding a frilled lizard while I'm talking about a corn snake now, doesn't it? I mean, sitting in front of the camera doing the list feature with a reptile on my shoulder, all I need is a bald cat now. So I have 3 corn snakes, and all 3 of them are a different morph. So we've got Groucho, which is a wild type corn snake. We've got Chico, which is an anery. And we've got Harpo, which is a snow. So basically, Chico gets weekly melanin injections, and he likes to tan. Harpo likes to get bleached every now and again. I mean, bleaching your asshole's a thing. Not really sure why, but apparently some people like it to be a little bit more pale, I guess. So Harpo is in that category of people, I guess, or snakes. There'd be no sense in me doing it because I've got the redhead gene, so it'd be kind of pointless. So Groucho is a normal snake, and Chico and Harpo both have tit jobs. Right, so the cost of keeping a corn snake. Yeah, now we're in the informative bit. Took me about half the video to get here, but we're here now. So I'm going to keep things simple, and we're going to do American money, because Canadian money wouldn't buy me a teaspoon. So one of the benefits of a corn snake is that they've been in the hobby for literally longer than I've been born. So a lot of the morphs are quite common, and in some cases the same price as the wild type. Like all 3 of mine, the anery, snow, and wild type, were all the same price. Now I bought them in Canada for about 50 bucks each, so that probably put them about 40 bucks American each. So I'm going to say that the snake itself is going to cost you about 40 bucks American. It might even be less, but we'll do that to be safe. Now yes, there are obviously some more expensive morphs when it comes to corn snakes. You've got the, what's it called? Palmetto? I don't know if that's right or wrong. I don't put a lot of time into learning about morphs. It's like a white one with like speckling or something. Don't know. But there are more expensive morphs, obviously. But we're not going to be looking at that. We're not getting snakes with tit jobs today. So 40 bucks, that's how much the corn snake's going to set you back. Chuck that into the pot. So next we've got the enclosure for a corn snake. Now corn snakes don't get that big, so you can easily buy a commercially available enclosure to house them in, and pretty much house them in that for the entirety of their life. Now my corn snakes like to climb, so I would recommend giving them some height. Maybe 18 inches of height, 24 would be better. My corn snakes are currently in a 4 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot enclosure, and they are all up high, so they like height. I would give it to them if you can. But you can buy an enclosure off the shelf for probably about 240 bucks American. That will get you an enclosure pretty much good for them for the entirety of their life. So 240 for the enclosure, we'll chuck that in the pot as well. So next we have to deal with the heat, humidity, and the lighting. So corn snakes are pretty simple when it comes to this stuff. We don't need the enclosure to have a super hot spot or to be super humid. It's just not really needed, they're very simple. Having most of the enclosures sit in that kind of room temperature, as long as you don't have a f***ing freezing house, it's probably going to be good, and then we can supply them with a heat mat. Your house's ambient heat is probably going to be plenty for majority of the enclosure, as long as you don't live in a freakishly cold spot or you're a cheapskate and don't put your furnace on. But we will need to supply them with a heat mat, right? Or if your house is a little bit colder, you might have to do something to bring up the enclosure heat. But for my house personally, I just need a heat mat on one side of the enclosure. That's pretty much it. Everything else is fine. So we'll say 25 bucks for a heat mat. Easy. You can easily get a pretty good solid one for that price. Then we need the lighting. Now, if you've got a glass enclosure, you might not need to worry about this as much, because the lights within your house will probably keep the enclosure bright enough. But what I like to do is put an actual light to brighten up the interior of the enclosure, especially if you've got a PVC enclosure. You're not going to be able to see anything inside that unless you have a light inside it. This light doesn't need to produce heat, but if you like, you can have it produce UVB, because there's a bit of argument whether snakes need it or not, but hell, if you're providing them with a bulb that produces light, you might as well give them the UVB. Where's the harm in it? So we'll throw 25 bucks in for a light fixture, 25 bucks in for a bulb. Done. And another thing that's important here is we're using a heat mat and we're using a light. So we're going to need a timer for that light, And we're going to need a thermostat for that heat mat. So we're going to chuck in another 75 bucks for the combination of those two things. That should be plenty. Now, when it comes to humidity, we don't really need to worry all that much. A water bowl in the enclosure is going to be plenty. Corn snakes just don't really care. They're just easy going. Whatever humidity your house is sitting at, as long as it's not barrenly dry or intensely humid, the corn snake's going to be fine with whatever you have. So we can ignore humidity in this case pretty much. Alright, so now we're on to substrate and decor for the enclosure. Well, decor is easy. Just go outside and grab some sticks. Some big sticks or some big logs or something for them to climb on. Clean them, obviously. Do not just put them in the enclosure, but like, you can't get anything more naturalistic than that. No cork bark is ever going to look as good as just a regular stick. And you can easily get them because corn snakes aren't heavy. You don't have to worry about getting a thick log. So just go out, get some little logs, bleach them, cook them, whatever you want to do to clean them. But I'd go down that route for things that they can climb on. Next we've got decor. Now, when it comes to snakes, using live plants isn't usually a good idea because they just tend to destroy them. Corn snakes aren't very heavy-bodied snakes, so you're probably safe with a lot of the more, what's the right word to use here? Don't plant something that's very young, that's small, because the corn snake will destroy it. If you plant something that's already kind of fortified, large enough to where they're not going to crush it, you can probably get away with it. I'm going to go down the path of fake plants for this video because it's just simpler and I don't know anything about real life plants, so we're just going to ignore that. Let's chuck 50 bucks in for some fake plants, some fake foliage, stuff like that. That should give you plenty to get that enclosure looking a little bit more lush. Then we've got substrate. So for that you could use wood shavings, mulch, soil, you know, literally whatever you want. Corn snakes are not going to give a fuck. Just put whatever substrate in there you like the look of. It's going to be fine. So we'll chuck 25 bucks into the pot for some substrate, that'll be plenty. Then we got 50 bucks for the decor and plant life. And then sticks are free basically, so we don't really need to worry about that. But we'll chuck in 10 bucks for some cleaning stuff to get the sticks, you know, ready for the enclosure. So that will put us at 85 for all this stuff. So we'll chuck that into the pot as well. So we also need a water bowl, and we want it to be big enough for the snake to soak in sometimes. Corn snakes don't do it all that often, but it's good to give them the option. So let's say 25 bucks for a water bowl. Now you could easily do everything I've just told you for way cheaper. What I'm imagining is that you're walking into a pet store, you grab one of the shopping carts, or trolleys if you're in the UK, and you just walk around putting stuff in that shopping cart that you need. You do not price compare, you do not buy it from Amazon or out of it, you just buy it in the pet store, just like a PetSmart or something. Because in fairness, that's how I started. I just went to the pet store, put stuff in the cart, set up the enclosure, and then later on realized, oh, I got ripped off because they charge you 3 or 4 times the price because it has a picture of a reptile on it. But I didn't know that at the time. So this budget plan here is set up for someone just walking into a pet store. You could easily do this cheaper though. 25 bucks for a water bowl, you could easily get one for probably 5. But if you want it to look like a rocky, naturalistic thing that's just pre-built, that's just ready off shelf, 25 bucks should be plenty. You're going to need a pair of feeding tongs as well, because based on last week's video, we know that that can end poorly sometimes. So a pair of feeding tongs, and you're going to need a few other miscellaneous things, probably like something to check the heat, something to check the humidity, some gauges, some stuff like that. So let's say 50 bucks for some gauges and some tongs. Easy. It's a corn snake, you don't need big tongs. Little ones will be fine. So I'd say that's pretty much everything we're going to need. So let's go over what we just did. I didn't write any of this down, did I? So we got 40 bucks for the snake itself, 240 bucks for the enclosure itself, 75 for heating and the lighting. I think we added an extra 50 onto that for the thermostat and timer. So 125 there, I think. If I got this wrong, comment below that I'm an idiot and I should be writing this down. 100 for the substrate and decor, 25 for the water bowl, 50 for the miscellaneous things and tongs. I think that's about right. So that'll put us at about 555 bucks, 550 bucks, something around there. To be honest, I can't remember all the values that I said, but that's close enough. But to be fair, 550 bucks in today's economy to start up a snake with the snake itself, that's not bad. I don't think that's too bad. I think when I first did my snake, it cost me about 300, but that was like 15 years ago, so sounds pretty comparable. But you could definitely do all this cheaper, guys. You could go on eBay, Craigslist, Kijiji, whatever secondhand app you have available to you. You could easily buy a used enclosure for probably half retail. You can also probably go online and find a baby corn snake for less than I said. In regards to my ball python, for example, I didn't pay for her. The breeder just wanted to get rid of her because she was a pastel and he didn't want pastels. So I just got her as a baby for free. She could probably find some corn snakes for free, or people giving them away, stuff like that. You don't need to buy everything with a picture of a reptile on it, so that's obviously going to save you money. Like you can get a water bowl from Walmart. You do not need to get one from the pet store itself. Substrate you can go to the hardware store and get, because you can go to a hardware store and buy a bag of substrate for $5 for a big fucking bag, like 40 kilogram bag, something like that. Or you go to a pet store and buy like a 5 kilogram bag with a picture of a reptile on it, and it will probably cost you more. So you could just do the hardware store, but for this particular video, we're doing everything in the pet store. So I think you could easily drop this down from like 550-ish around. We're just going to say that because I can't remember the exact values that we used, to probably like 200-ish. If you do some thinking ahead and you don't just walk into a pet store willy-nilly with a shopping cart, easily drop it down a couple of $100. Now, we have the last part of finances when it comes to reptiles, the monthly expenses, which is something you need to pay attention to, especially when you start increasing the size of your collection. Like if you have one reptile, the monthly price is quite low. If you have 50, it starts to build. You've got substrate changes, you've got feeding, there's a lot to do, right? So you've got to be aware of your monthly expenses and make sure that you can actually fit them within your budget. You don't want to just do the startup costs, you want to be able to maintain that lifestyle for the snake. So let's see. You're going to have to do substrate changes, you're obviously going to have to feed, you're going to have to do bulk changes, you might have to replace bits here and there as it breaks. So the substrate we bought and the bulb we just bought, they're going to last us quite a while. So we're not going to need to worry too much about stuff like that. I'm going to say, to be generous, 15 to 20 bucks a month is probably plenty to get your snake to live a very good life. Remember, American money. If this was Canadian money, I couldn't buy a teaspoon. So we're going to say about 550 bucks to start up with a corn snake, all the setup beautifully done, and about 200 bucks a year, let's say, on all of the monthly expenses combined. I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty fair evaluation. Could easily do it cheaper, but for a starting reptile owner, because let's be fair, most of us just walk into the pet store and buy stuff from there. We do not do the research outside of that. I think this is a pretty good basic outline as to what you're going to get and what you can get. So let me know in the comments if you think I should do this with a little bit more in depth, and if so, what reptile I should do it with.